You are doing fine. At least, that is what everyone thinks. You show up on time. You meet your deadlines. You answer your messages. You smile at the right moments. You hold it together at work, at home, in public, in front of everyone who depends on you. From the outside, you look like one of the most capable, composed, put-together people in the room. But inside there is something else entirely. A low, constant hum of unease that never fully goes away. A voice in the back of your mind that is always scanning, always warning, always preparing for something to go wrong. A tiredness that sleep does not fix. A sense that no matter how much you accomplish, it is never quite enough. That you are always one mistake away from everything falling apart. You have learned to carry this so well that most people cannot see it. You have learned to carry it so well that sometimes you cannot even see it yourself. This is not weakness. This is not drama. This is not you being too sensitive or overthinking things. This is high-functioning anxiety. And it is one of the most misunderstood, most invisible, and most deeply exhausting psychological experiences a human being can live with. Today, on Brain Ritual, we are going to go deep. We are going to explore what high-functioning anxiety actually is, where it comes from, what it does to your brain and your body, and, most importantly, why the very coping mechanisms that make you look so capable on the outside are often the things that are quietly destroying you on the inside. By the end of this video, many of you are going to feel something you may not have felt in a very long time. So stay with me. This one is important. Let us begin with something that might surprise you. High-functioning anxiety is not an official clinical diagnosis. You will not find it listed in the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders that psychiatrists and psychologists use to classify conditions. It does not have its own diagnostic code. It does not come with a standard treatment protocol. And yet, millions of people around the world live with it every single day. So what exactly is it? High-functioning anxiety is a term used to describe a pattern of chronic anxiety that is masked and often amplified by high levels of performance, achievement, and outward competence. It is anxiety that wears a disguise. The disguise looks like productivity, like perfectionism, like reliability, like being the person everyone can count on, like always being prepared, always being organized, always being one step ahead. And because the disguise works so well, because the anxiety is producing results that the world rewards, it often goes unrecognized for years, sometimes decades. The person living with it does not look like someone who is struggling. They look like someone who is thriving. But here is the psychological reality. The productivity is not coming from ease. It is coming from fear. The preparation is not coming from confidence. It is coming from dread. The achievement is not coming from joy. It is coming from a deep, relentless terror of what might happen if they stop. This is the central paradox of high-functioning anxiety. The very thing that is harming you is the thing that makes you look like you have it all together. And because the world keeps rewarding you for it, because people keep saying how impressive you are, how reliable, how capable, there is very little external pressure to look beneath the surface. Why would you fix something that appears to be working? This is why so many people with high-functioning anxiety reach their 30s, their 40s, even their 50s before they finally understand what has been happening inside them their entire lives. Now let us talk about what high-functioning anxiety actually feels like from the inside. Because I think for many of you watching this is the part that matters most. Not the clinical language, not the research, but the felt experience. The daily reality of living inside a mind that will not let you rest. You wake up in the morning and before your eyes are fully open, your mind is already running. It is already generating the list. The things you need to do. The things you might forget. The things that could go wrong today. The conversations you need to have. The conversations you are dreading. The deadlines. The expectations. The people who are depending on you. Before you have taken a single breath of the day, your nervous system is already at a low-level red alert. And here is what makes it different from the kind of anxiety that stops people in their tracks. You get up anyway. You make the coffee. You get dressed. You go. You do the thing. You do all the things. You do them well. You smile through it. You push through it. You override the internal alarm signal with sheer willpower and discipline and a deeply ingrained belief that stopping is not an option. Throughout the day, you are simultaneously performing at a high level and quietly managing an internal experience that no one around you can see. You are in a meeting and contributing intelligent, articulate ideas while underneath the surface your mind is simultaneously monitoring every facial expression in the room, analyzing whether that one person's silence means disapproval, rehearsing what you will say next, and quietly catastrophizing about 3 different scenarios that have not happened yet. You finish a piece of work that is genuinely excellent, and your first instinct is not pride. It is a brief exhale of relief followed almost immediately by a scan of everything that could still go wrong, every way it might not be good enough, every criticism someone might have. You help a friend through a crisis with warmth and wisdom and steadiness, and then you go home and lie awake worrying that you said the wrong thing, that you were not helpful enough, that they are quietly disappointed in you. You plan ahead for everything. You are always early. You are always prepared. You always have a contingency, not because you enjoy it, but because the thought of being caught unprepared, of something going wrong that you could have prevented, feels genuinely unbearable. You say yes when you mean no, not because you are a pushover, but because the anxiety of disappointing someone, of being seen as difficult or unreliable, is louder in that moment than your own needs. You lie awake at night, not worrying about dramatic catastrophes, but about ordinary things. A slightly awkward email you sent 3 days ago, whether someone is upset with you, whether you handled that situation correctly, whether the people you love are truly okay, whether you are doing enough, being enough, whether at some point, somehow, the whole carefully constructed appearance of competence is going to collapse, and everyone is going to see what you have always secretly feared about yourself. Does any of this sound familiar? If it does, I want you to know something right now, before we go any further. This is not who you are. This is something that happened to you. And there is a profound difference between those two things. To understand where high-functioning anxiety comes from, we need to go back. Further back than you might expect. We need to go back to the very beginning of your life. To the years before you had words for any of this. To the environment in which your nervous system was first shaped. Because here is what neuroscience and developmental psychology have shown us with extraordinary clarity over the past several decades. Anxiety is not primarily a thought problem. It is a nervous system problem. And your nervous system was largely wired in childhood. In the first years of life, your brain is developing at a speed it will never match again. Billions of neural connections are being formed. Patterns are being established. And the most fundamental pattern being established is this. Is the world safe? Are other people reliable? Am I okay? A child's nervous system learns the answers to these questions not from words, not from what parents say, but from experience. From the felt, embodied, repeated experience of how the world responds to them. A child who grows up in an environment that is warm, consistent, predictable, and emotionally responsive learns at a deep neurological level. The world is fundamentally safe. I can relax. If something goes wrong, I will be helped. My needs matter. I am enough. This child develops what psychologists call a secure attachment. And secure attachment is the neurological foundation of a calm, regulated nervous system. But many children do not grow up in this environment. And I want to be very careful here, because the environments that produce high-functioning anxiety are not always the ones that look obviously harmful from the outside. Sometimes they are. Sometimes there is clear trauma, neglect, abuse, instability, addiction in the family, violence, loss. But often, very often, the environments that produce high-functioning anxiety look completely normal, even good. A high-achieving family where love is subtly conditional on performance, where being praised means getting good grades, winning competitions, being well-behaved, and where failure, even small failure, results in disappointment that feels devastating to a child's nervous system. A family where a parent is emotionally unpredictable, not abusive, not neglectful in an obvious way, but a parent whose moods shift without warning. whose approval feels always slightly out of reach, where the emotional atmosphere of the home is something the child is constantly trying to read and manage. A family where one or both parents are themselves anxious, where worry is the dominant emotional tone, where the world is implicitly communicated to be a place full of threats that must be managed, monitored, and controlled. A family where a child had to grow up too fast, where they became the emotional caretaker for a parent or for siblings, where they learned early that their role was to manage other people's feelings, to keep the peace, to be the capable one. In all of these environments, and many others like them, a child's nervous system learns a very specific lesson. The lesson is, it is not safe to relax. Vigilance is survival. Performing is love. Achieving is safety. If you let your guard down, something bad will happen. If you stop being useful, you will be abandoned. If you show weakness, you will be punished or dismissed. These lessons are not learned consciously. They do not arrive as thoughts or beliefs that the child can examine and evaluate. They are learned at the level of the body, at the level of the nervous system. They become the invisible operating system running beneath everything. And then the child grows up and carries that operating system into adulthood, into their career, their relationships, their daily experience of being alive. The child becomes an adult who cannot stop, who cannot rest, who cannot receive a compliment without immediately deflecting it, who cannot finish one achievement without immediately scanning for the next, who cannot sit in silence without the silence filling with dread. The child becomes an adult who looks to all the world like they are thriving, and inside, they are exhausted in a way they cannot even fully explain. Now I want to talk about something that is absolutely central to understanding high-functioning anxiety, and that almost never gets discussed openly: the coping mechanisms. Because the thing that makes high-functioning anxiety so insidious, so hard to recognize, and so hard to treat is that the strategies the anxious person has developed to manage their anxiety work, at least on the surface, at least in the short term. Perfectionism works, in the sense that doing everything to an exceptional standard does reduce the chance of criticism or failure. So the anxious brain learns, if I am perfect, I am safe. And it pursues perfection relentlessly, compulsively, exhaustingly. Over-preparation works, in the sense that having a plan for every possible scenario does reduce the likelihood of being caught off guard. So the anxious brain learns, if I prepare enough, I can control the outcome. And it prepares obsessively, spending enormous mental energy on scenarios that will never happen. People-pleasing works, in the sense that keeping everyone around you happy does reduce conflict and the threat of abandonment or rejection. So the anxious brain learns, if I make everyone like me, I am safe. And it contorts itself endlessly, sacrificing its own needs and boundaries to maintain the approval of others. Staying busy works, in the sense that constant activity does crowd out the anxiety, giving the nervous system something to focus on other than the formless dread that waits in stillness. So the anxious brain learns, as long as I keep moving, I do not have to feel it. And it fills every moment, every gap, every quiet space with tasks and obligations and productivity. Each of these strategies is, in its origin, an intelligent adaptation. A child found a way to create safety in an environment that did not provide it naturally. That is not a flaw. That is creativity. That is resilience. That is the human organism doing what it does best, finding a way to survive. The problem is that survival strategies are not the same as living strategies. What works for a child in an unpredictable environment does not work for an adult in a world that is not, objectively, as threatening as the nervous system believes it to be. The perfectionism that protected a child from a parent's disappointment now drives an adult into burnout and self-hatred because no standard is ever high enough. The over-preparation that gave a child a sense of control in a chaotic home now exhausts an adult who cannot take a single unplanned moment without panic. The people-pleasing that kept a child safe from conflict now leaves an adult with no authentic relationships, no boundaries, and a profound disconnection from their own needs and identity. The busyness that distracted a child from emotional pain now prevents an adult from ever sitting still long enough to know who they actually are, what they actually feel, what they actually want from their life. The coping mechanisms that once protected you are now the cage. And here is perhaps the most painful part of all. Because these mechanisms produce results, because they make you look capable and competent, and together, the world around you actively reinforces them. Your boss praises your work ethic. Your friends rely on your steadiness. Your family counts on you. The world rewards the cage. And so you stay in it. Not because you want to, but because every time you consider slowing down, the voice that learned its lesson in childhood pipes up immediately. If you stop, everything will fall apart. If you rest, you will fall behind. If you show your real feelings, people will leave. If you are not perfect, you are worthless. That voice is not the truth, but it is very, very loud. Let us talk about the body now, because high-functioning anxiety does not only live in the mind, it lives in the body, and the body keeps a record of everything the mind has been carrying. The science here is remarkable and important. When your brain perceives a threat, any threat, real or imagined, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. This is your fight or flight response. It is an ancient survival mechanism designed to prepare your body to either fight a predator or run from one. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes shallow. Stress hormones, primarily cortisol and adrenaline, flood your system. Your muscles tense. Your digestion slows. Your immune system temporarily downregulates. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for rational thinking, perspective, and calm decision-making, becomes less active, while your amygdala, your brain's alarm system, takes over. This is an extraordinary system. It saves lives in genuine emergencies. The problem is that your amygdala cannot tell the difference between a lion in the grass and an email from your manager. It cannot tell the difference between a genuine physical threat and the imagined disapproval of someone you respect. It cannot tell the difference between a real emergency and the low-level social threat of feeling judged, inadequate, or out of control. So for a person with high-functioning anxiety, this stress response is not activating occasionally in genuine emergencies. It is activating constantly, at a low level, perhaps, not the full explosion of a panic attack, but a chronic, sustained, low-grade activation that never fully switches off. And what does chronic activation of the stress response do to the human body over time? The research is sobering. It disrupts sleep architecture. Even when you fall asleep, you are not getting the deep, restorative sleep your body needs, because your nervous system is maintaining a low level of vigilance even in sleep. It creates chronic muscle tension, particularly in the neck, shoulders, jaw, and lower back. Many people with high-functioning anxiety carry this tension so constantly that they have stopped noticing it. It has become their normal. It disrupts digestion. The gut and the brain are deeply connected through what scientists call the gut-brain axis, and chronic stress profoundly affects digestive health, contributing to conditions like irritable bowel syndrome, bloating, and chronic stomach discomfort. It suppresses immune function. People with chronic anxiety get sick more often, take longer to recover, and are more vulnerable to inflammatory conditions. It affects cardiovascular health. Sustained elevated cortisol contributes to high blood pressure, increased heart rate variability, and over the long term, increased risk of heart disease. It affects cognitive function. The brain under chronic stress has reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, meaning reduced capacity for creativity, flexible thinking, nuanced judgment, and emotional regulation. The very qualities that high-functioning anxious people pride themselves on are being gradually eroded by the anxiety itself. And perhaps most significantly for the people living with this, it is exhausting in a way that rest does not fix. Because the exhaustion of high-functioning anxiety is not primarily physical. It is neurological. It is the exhaustion of a nervous system that has been running on high alert for years, sometimes decades, without ever being allowed to truly come down. This is why so many people with high-functioning anxiety describe a particular kind of tiredness that they cannot explain to others. A bone-deep weariness that a good night's sleep does not touch. A feeling of running on empty even when their life, on paper, is going well. The tank is not empty because of what they are doing. The tank is empty because of the constant internal cost of managing the anxiety that no one can see. There is something else I want to talk about that rarely comes up in conversations about anxiety. The grief. Because living with high-functioning anxiety for years, especially unrecognized, unnamed, unacknowledged, involves a particular kind of loss that is easy to miss until you stop and look directly at it. There is the loss of ease, the spontaneous, unguarded, genuinely relaxed experience of just being alive, sitting somewhere beautiful and actually being present in it, not mentally 3 steps ahead, not monitoring for threats, not composing the next task on the list. Many people with high-functioning anxiety have not experienced true ease in so long that they have forgotten it is even possible. There is the loss of authentic connection. When you are constantly managing your presentation, constantly monitoring other people's reactions, constantly editing yourself to be what you believe others need you to be, genuine intimacy becomes almost impossible. You can be liked. You can be admired. You can be relied upon. But being truly known, allowing another person to see you without the performance, feels terrifying. And so a profound loneliness takes root, even in the middle of full, busy, socially rich lives. There is the loss of your own desires. When your entire inner life has been oriented around achievement, approval, and avoiding catastrophe, your own authentic wants and needs get crowded out. What do you actually enjoy? Not what are you good at? Not what do people praise you for? But what fills you with genuine, uncomplicated pleasure? Many people with high-functioning anxiety find this question surprisingly difficult to answer. They have been so focused on performing and producing that they have lost touch with simply wanting. There is the loss of the present moment. Anxiety lives in the future. It is always projecting, always anticipating, always preparing for what might happen next. And every moment that your mind is in the imagined future is a moment you are not actually in your life. The conversation you are having but not truly present for. The meal you are eating but not tasting. The sunset you are watching while mentally composing tomorrow's schedule. A life lived mostly in anticipation of the life you are not quite fully living. These losses are real, and they deserve to be grieved. Not with drama or self-pity, but with honest, compassionate acknowledgement. Something important has been taken from you. Or more precisely, something important has been given away, bit by bit, in the service of an anxiety that told you it was keeping you safe. Naming this grief is not weakness. It is the beginning of clarity. Now let me address something directly. Something that I know is going through the mind of some of you right now. Maybe you are sitting with a quiet resistance. A voice saying, "But I am fine. I function. I achieve. Surely this is just how driven people are. Surely this is just the price of caring about things. Surely everyone feels like this, and some people are just stronger about it." I want to meet that voice with gentleness, because it is a very familiar voice. It is the same voice that has been keeping you going for years. But I want to gently offer a different question. The question is not, am I functioning? The question is, at what cost? Because functioning is not the same as thriving. Achieving is not the same as being at peace. Managing is not the same as being well. A car can keep running long past the point where it should have been serviced. It will still get you from place to place. It will still appear to be working. But underneath, things are wearing down. Things are being stressed past their tolerance. Things that could have been addressed easily, early, are becoming serious problems. Your nervous system is not a machine, but the analogy holds. The question is not whether you can keep going. You obviously can. You have proven that, over and over again. The question is, what would it feel like to stop just surviving the inside of your own mind and start actually living there? Let us talk about something that intersects with high-functioning anxiety in ways that are only beginning to be understood. The relationship between high-functioning anxiety and what researchers are calling high sensitivity. In the 1990s, psychologist Elaine Aron identified a trait she called sensory processing sensitivity, now more commonly known as being a highly sensitive person or HSP. Highly sensitive people, and research suggests this applies to roughly 15 to 20% of the population, process sensory and emotional information more deeply than the average person. Their nervous systems are wired to pick up on subtleties that others miss. Subtle shifts in mood, subtle changes in atmosphere, subtle social cues, subtle environmental stimuli. This is not a disorder. It is a trait. In the right environment, an environment that is safe, supportive, and relatively calm, highly sensitive people often demonstrate extraordinary empathy, creativity, depth of thought, and richness of inner life. But in environments that are chaotic, unpredictable, emotionally volatile, or demanding, which is to say, in environments that many children grow up in, high sensitivity becomes a source of overwhelming input that the child's nervous system struggles to process. The highly sensitive child notices everything, feels everything, is affected by everything, and without the support and tools to process that depth of experience, they can develop anxiety almost as a default response to a world that constantly feels like too much. Many people with high-functioning anxiety are also highly sensitive people. The two are not the same, but they overlap significantly, and understanding this intersection matters. Because if you are both highly sensitive and highly anxious, the world is not just threatening, it is loud. It is relentless. It is constantly demanding more processing than your nervous system can comfortably provide. And the high-functioning response, the performance, the achievement, the control, is in part an attempt to manage an overwhelming sensory and emotional reality by exerting as much control over the environment as possible. If I can be perfect, maybe the world will not be so loud. If I can anticipate everything, maybe the input will be manageable. If I can make everyone around me calm and happy, maybe I can finally feel calm too. This is not irrational. This is a deeply intelligent, deeply human response to a reality that feels genuinely difficult to bear. Now I want to talk about identity, because this is where it gets truly deep. For many people with high-functioning anxiety, the anxiety and the performance are not just something they have. They have become something they are. The achiever, the reliable one, the person who has it together, the one everyone can count on, the one who is always prepared, always capable, always okay. This identity, built on top of anxiety, sustained by anxiety, expressed through the behaviors that anxiety produces, can become so central, so fundamental to how a person understands themselves and how others understand them, that the thought of releasing it feels genuinely terrifying. Who am I without my productivity? Who am I without my achievement? Who am I without being the person everyone relies on? Who am I if I stop performing? These are not small questions. For many people, they are the most frightening questions imaginable. Because the honest answer, the one the anxiety does not want you to reach, is this. You are someone who has never been allowed to simply exist. You have always had to earn your place, to justify your presence, to prove your worth through output, through usefulness, through the flawless management of everything and everyone around you. And somewhere underneath all the performance, there is a person who never got to find out who they actually are when they are not trying to be good enough. That person is still there, quieter than the anxiety, less visible than the achievements, but still there. And they are waiting, with extraordinary patience, for you to come back for them. Let us now turn towards something that matters deeply. What does healing actually look like for high-functioning anxiety? Because I think it is important to be honest here. Healing from high-functioning anxiety is not about becoming a different person. It is not about losing your ambition or your work ethic or your care for others. Those qualities are genuinely yours. They are not the problem. The work of healing is about changing the source of those qualities. Right now, for many of you, the source is fear. The ambition is powered by dread. The work ethic is powered by terror of failure. The care for others is powered by anxiety about abandonment. Healing is the process of slowly, gradually, learning to access those same qualities, the commitment, the care, the drive, from a different place. From genuine desire instead of fear. From authentic values instead of survival instincts. From choice instead of compulsion. This does not happen overnight. It is not a weekend workshop or a 10-step program. It is a process, a real, sustained, often non-linear process of learning to relate differently to your own nervous system. The first and perhaps most important step is simply recognition. Naming what is happening, understanding its origins, seeing the pattern clearly, perhaps for the first time, and saying, "This is not a personal failing. This is a learned response. This is my nervous system doing what it was shaped to do. I am not broken. I am adapted." That recognition alone, the simple act of seeing yourself clearly and compassionately, begins to change the relationship between you and the anxiety. It shifts you from being inside it to being able to observe it. And that shift, however small it seems, is genuinely significant. The second step is learning to work with your nervous system rather than against it. Most people with high-functioning anxiety have spent their lives overriding their nervous system, pushing through, ignoring the signals, treating the body's communications as inconveniences to be managed rather than information to be listened to. The nervous system does not respond well to being overridden indefinitely. Eventually, it insists on being heard, sometimes through illness, sometimes through burnout, sometimes through the kind of collapse that finally forces the stillness that was never chosen voluntarily. Working with the nervous system means learning its language, noticing when activation is rising, developing practices, whether through breathing, movement, mindfulness, time in nature, creative expression, or genuine rest, that help the nervous system complete its stress cycles and return to a state of regulation. This is not soft or indulgent. This is neurologically essential maintenance for a system that has been running in overdrive for years. The third step involves going back to where the patterns were formed. This is the work that often requires support, a skilled therapist, a trusted relationship, a genuine community of understanding. Because the beliefs that drive high-functioning anxiety, the beliefs about worthiness, about safety, about what must be performed in order to be loved, were formed in relationship, and they tend to be most effectively transformed in relationship. In a therapeutic relationship where you can begin to experience something different, where you can be seen without having to perform, where you can express the parts of yourself you have hidden, the fear, the exhaustion, the grief, the uncertainty, and discover that you are not abandoned for it, that you are not less lovable for it, that your worth is not conditional on your output. This kind of relational healing is slow. It is not dramatic, but it is, at the neurological level, genuinely transformative. It is how the nervous system learns, at last, a different answer to the question it has been asking since childhood. Is it safe to stop? The fourth step, and this is perhaps the most counterintuitive of all, is learning to tolerate not being okay. One of the deepest drivers of high-functioning anxiety is the belief that being not okay is dangerous, that allowing yourself to feel fear, sadness, uncertainty, confusion, or failure is somehow catastrophic, that if you let yourself go there, you will not come back. This belief is the legacy of an environment where not being okay had real consequences, where vulnerability was met with disapproval, anxiety, or emotional unavailability, where the only safe option was to hold it together. But in the present, for most adults with high-functioning anxiety, being not okay is not actually dangerous. It is uncomfortable. It is unfamiliar. It can feel enormous, especially when you have been avoiding it for decades. But it is not dangerous. Learning to tolerate the discomfort of genuine emotion, to allow fear to move through you without immediately reaching for control, to allow sadness to be felt without immediately reaching for productivity, to allow uncertainty to exist without immediately reaching for a plan. This is the work that slowly dismantles the anxiety's power. Because anxiety feeds on avoidance. Every time you override a feeling, every time you reach for a coping mechanism instead of staying with the emotion, you send a message to your nervous system. This feeling is dangerous. And the nervous system, wanting to keep you safe, turns up the volume. But when you stay, when you breathe, when you allow, when you discover that the feeling is survivable, something gradually shifts. The nervous system begins to learn a new lesson. This is hard, but I can bear it. I do not have to run from myself. I want to speak now to something very specific. Something I know is true for many of you who are still watching at this point in the video. There may be a part of you that is resonating deeply with everything being said here, that is recognizing itself in these words. That feels, perhaps for the first time, like someone is describing the exact experience you have been carrying alone for years. And alongside that recognition, there may be something else. A resistance, a skepticism, a voice that says, but if this is me, then what does that mean for everything I have built, everything I have achieved, everything that I am? I want to answer that voice directly. It means nothing negative about what you have built. Your achievements are real. Your capabilities are real. Your care for others is real. None of that disappears when you understand that it has been partially driven by anxiety. What changes is the relationship. What changes is the cost. Imagine doing everything you currently do, but from a place of genuine peace instead of driven fear. Imagine producing your best work because you genuinely love it, not because the alternative is terror. Imagine caring for the people in your life because it brings you joy, not because you are afraid of what happens if you stop. Imagine achieving not to prove something, to yourself, to the past, to the voices in your head, but simply because it is what you choose to do. This is not a fantasy. This is what healing makes possible. Not the removal of ambition, the liberation of it. Not the end of caring, the freeing of it. Not the loss of yourself, the finding of yourself. Before we come to the end of this journey, I want to say something to the people who are watching this and thinking not of themselves, but of someone they love. A partner, a friend, a sibling, a child. If you recognize someone you love in what has been described today, I want to offer you this. The most powerful thing you can give a person with high-functioning anxiety is not advice. It is not solutions. It is not telling them to relax, or slow down, or stop worrying. It is presence. It is the willingness to sit with them in their experience without trying to fix it. To see them, not the performance, not the capability, not the competence, but the actual person underneath all of that. To let them know, through your consistent presence and genuine acceptance, that they are loved not for what they produce, but for who they are. For many people with high-functioning anxiety, this is a genuinely new experience. To be loved without having to earn it. To be accepted without having to perform. To feel safe in a relationship not because they have managed it perfectly, but simply because they are in it. This experience, small, repeated, consistent acts of genuine acceptance, is neurologically healing. It introduces new data into a nervous system that was taught, long ago, that love is conditional. You do not need to be a therapist to offer this. You just need to be present, to ask how they really are, and then actually wait for the real answer. To let them be imperfect in front of you without your approval of them changing. To love them on the difficult days as much as on the days when they are performing beautifully. That is a gift beyond measure. We have traveled a long way together today. We have looked at what high-functioning anxiety actually is, not a clinical diagnosis, but a deeply human pattern of living. A way of moving through the world that looks like thriving on the outside and feels like barely surviving on the inside. We have understood where it comes from, not from weakness, not from some fundamental flaw in the person carrying it, but from intelligent adaptation to environments that were not as safe, as consistent, or as unconditionally loving as every child deserves. We have looked at the coping mechanisms, the perfectionism, the overpreparation, the people-pleasing, the busyness, and understood how they became both the survival strategy and the prison. We have felt the body's truth, the exhaustion, the tension, the sleeplessness, the cost that the body keeps paying silently for the anxiety the mind refuses to acknowledge. We have grieved the losses, the ease, the connection, the presence, the simple pleasure of being alive without the constant hum of threat. And we have looked toward something better, not a destination, but a direction. The slow, profound, entirely possible work of learning to live from peace instead of from fear. If there is one thing I want you to carry from this video, one single truth that lands and stays, let it be this. The fact that you are functioning does not mean you are fine. And the fact that you are not fine does not mean you cannot become so. You have been carrying something heavy for a very long time. You have carried it with extraordinary grace, with strength and capability and care for others that genuinely matters. But you do not have to carry it alone anymore. And you do not have to keep carrying it forever. The work of coming home to yourself, of slowly, gently, learning to exist without the constant performance, without the relentless vigilance, without the voice that says you are only as worthy as your last achievement. That work is the most important work you will ever do. Not because it will make you more successful, not because it will make you more impressive, but because it will make you more you. And you, simply as you are, without the performance, without the achievement, without the perfectly managed exterior. You are enough. You always were. Thank you for spending this time with Brain Ritual. If this video reached something in you that needed to be reached, if it named something you have been living with but never had the words for, please know that this is exactly why this channel exists. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what resonated most. And if you are on this journey of understanding your own mind, subscribe and stay with us. Because there is so much more to explore. Take care of your mind. Take care of your nervous system. Take care of the person inside you who is doing their very best. I will see you in the next one.